Hi friends, welcome back to my studio. I'm Katie and it's time to talk about my Passport Pocket Plus Franken planner. I've been showing hints of this as I've been doing plan with me's in my Passport Sterling Ink Common Planner, but I wasn't ready to talk about this case cover thing yet, but I'm ready to talk about it now. Sort of. So the thing to know about this is that this is a prototype. Everything you're going to see in here is a little rough. It is assembled from whatever I had kicking around in my studio. Now, because I do have a background in having a custom purse sewing business, I have a lot of things kicking around in my studio, but that's why everything looks not as beautifully aesthetic as it could. I was just throwing this together to try and get a sense of what the measurements were and whatever, and living with it for about a month before I sewed something nicer for myself. We're almost at the 1 month mark. We just finished week 3, and I was actually using it a little bit at the very end of December. Even though I hadn't moved into my planner yet, I was starting to kind of get things assembled. So I'm starting to feel like I have a pretty good idea of what's working for me, and I have made some modifications in the last 3 weeks. So I have this elastic band. Again, it's just stuff I had around my studio. I'm using it. If I were buying one, I would get one from like Plotter. Has them. It's, you know, like a page lifter with an elastic band around it, and I'm using that to keep it closed, and I really like that. There was a time I was thinking about putting one around, like out here, like a TN, and going around this way, and I think that would also work, and it might help hold my pens. But this is the one I did first, and I have been enjoying it, and I can always add the other one later if I feel like it. The pen loop situation is one of the things I've changed several times. You can see I've stitched and unstitched here. Originally I had like an actual pen loop. I've switched to just a piece of, like a small piece of elastic, and I have all of the pen clips in there, and I like that better because they actually I can get them to this Jinhao is not the best for getting clips through, which is kind of annoying, but the Lamy is quite good though. Although the Lamy and I are fighting because it turns out that D1 refills are a pain because you run out of them really fast. So they lie on top of each other like this pretty nicely, and so I didn't want it goes nicely into my bag. And then I've got this tiny pencil, and I also just put that here, and that means, oh, that's why I was having a problem. Don't do things on camera. It's hard to do things on camera. There we go. Even things you do all the time, every day. So those 3 all just kind of go together, and I have this fairly compact packet. And I do take this thing with me, like, not just like to work with me every day, but around the house with me all day. This is where like all of my fleeting thoughts that I would lose, go. So it's important to me that I have everything I need and that it not be cumbersome. So I'm switching out the Lamy 2000 for this Pilot Prayer at the moment, and that is essentially the same. The problem is that the Lamy 2000 has this like spring clip where if you press here, it opens up the clip, and none of my other pens have that, so they kind of vary in how nicely they come in and out. So that's still a work in progress. The Banus also have that. I'm sure some other things do too, but I don't really want to be carrying a Banu around with me. Because I love them, I'm a little afraid that they're fragile, and they're kind of big and expensive. This is 5.5 inches tall, and actually a fair number of pens fit in there. So like that, but yeah, even the SD is a little tall. If you go to like Goulet's. Here's the Diplomat Magnum. It's possible that would be a good one. I haven't tried that in here. Let's see how easy. This is not the point. Oh, that slide's written real nice. All right, that's for me. Anyway, 5.5 inches is not as long as many pens, but long. But plenty of pens are about that length, so that works out well. So this is a trifold, as you can see. I need to make this edge, I think about about a 1/4 of an inch longer. So that's a mod I'm going to be making. Otherwise, I feel like the size is pretty good. So the way I have this set up is that it opens to my common planner. And I like this because most of the time when I'm opening it, I'm not using the rings. The rings are supplemental. The common planner is what I am getting in and out of, on a minute by minute basis. And so I like that I can just open it and go to my common planner, and the rings can just stay behind, and it means that I don't need all of the trifold extended on my desk. So, in this configuration, it's still quite small. It's like having a passport in a cover kind of width. I could have just put the cover in here, but in order to accommodate the rings, I had to make the cover just a little taller. And so it's not a very snug fit. If I wanted to, I could put another line of stitching around here, and that would create a nicer fit. Right now I have this in a clear cover. I just sewed this one myself, but I think any clear cover should work. And I have the clear cover in the pocket, and then I have the common planner just in only one side of it. I did it this way because I actually like the feeling of the cover, and I didn't want it tucked inside, and I didn't really want it in the clear. That's just personal preference, but I've been happy with this. I do get a little sliding here. It would still, I think, benefit from another line of stitching. I've also thought about getting like a magnet and like magneting it in, because it doesn't shift a lot or super easily, but it does shift some. So that's still a work in process. And then I've done a number of videos about how I set up my common planner, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, but I do use a lot of tabs and clips to get exactly where I want quickly. So I have this big paper clip that I use to get straight to my dailies. And then I've got one of these Midori index clips to get to my weekly, to get to my monthly, which I almost never use. And then I have these, what are they? The Post-it repositionable tabs that I've just cut down and stuck here. This is on my quarterly page. I get here all the time when I'm doing my habits multiple times a day. I have a video about that. These are wearing down a little, so we'll see. But I like these thumb tabs to go immediately where I want to go. And then my other habit tracker is here on this annual overview. And so I use these thumb tabs all of the time to get exactly where I want to be very quickly in my common planner. I really like that. I don't usually bother with like kind of permanent tabs down the side, because like I don't care about getting to April quickly. I want to get to the page I am on quickly. So that's how I do that. And then we get to the next part of the trifold. And so when it's all extended, it is pretty long, because it's more than 3 times a page size. It's 13.5 inches wide. I'm not going to give you detailed measurements for everything because it's still a work in progress, and I haven't really decided if this is something I might want to sell or in the future. So more coming out on that. If I decide not to, I'll release the measurements. but just so you get an idea of how wide it is, fully extended. But I do think there's some real advantages to having it fully extended. So at the beginning of my rings, these are A7 rings. These are 15 millimeter A7 rings. I wanted the like plotter, like 10 millimeter rings at first, although I think the 15 millimeters is the right thing, and also they are so much easier to find and so much cheaper than the 10 millimeter rings. These were like $6 and the other ones are like 40. So if you're curious why the Woozy and the plotters are so expensive, that's not the only reason, but I'm certain it's part of it. But one of the things that's nice about, so I put my weekly list here on the very first page, and what I like about this is when I'm doing my daily, I can have them both open right at the same time, and it's very easy to look at this while I'm writing that, and I do really enjoy this element a lot. But if I'm just dealing with the rings by themselves, I'm not doing anything with the passport, I can fold it this way. And this is part of why I do tend to take my pens out at my desk or whatever, because they can get in the way if I'm doing things in this format. But I can, again, have it in this format. It's 9 inches wide. So, so if I'm just working in the ring section, I can close this up. There's some advantages here, although also some disadvantages. So I have some really janky page lifters in here that I just made out of some laminate. I will need to make nicer ones than this in the future, but for my prototype, this is working well. But one of the interesting things about this setup is, as a right-handed person, writing on the left page can be hard with the rings. That's one of the reasons people like the 10 millimeter rings, is that they're smaller. But actually this common planner is kind of the right height to page lift this. So if you've got a firm foundation, I can be writing on this left side and I'm almost flush with the rings, and it's really not bad. Now I do slit all of my inserts as well, and that can be easier, but from just a jotting perspective, it actually makes the left side shockingly like doable. And then the right side is fine because there's no rings there. I think it would get awkwarder and awkwarder the further back I am in my ring section. But then if I wanted to, I could take this out of the way. So I haven't had a problem with that. I'm not keeping that many pages in here, although I am adding more, so we'll see. I would say that's like 1/8 of an inch thick, something like that. Maybe a little more. 3/16. Anyway. Again, I have lots of thumb tabs here. This is my preferred way to get where I am going. Page lifter on both sides. This one styled like the plotter one. The plotter accessories really aren't that expensive, in my opinion, compared to the actual thing. So if you want some nicer looking accessories, that's not a bad way to go. And then I don't know how much we should get into what I'm actually keeping in my rings, or if this is more just a discussion of my cover. Let's hit the rings briefly. So I have a few sections. This is very much a living document at this point. I'm adding things as I think of them, but the pace has decreased significantly. So at the very front, I keep this week's weekly list, and I always have this week's on top. So here, here's a previous week. And honestly, this is just grid page, and what I'm going to do when this week is over is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do week 4 here. And that way my weekly list is always on the right side so that I can reference it the way we talked about and so that I don't have to write on the left side of the page. We'll talk about the hole punch in a minute. So here in the front is just weekly lists. I don't currently have dividers between the sections. I've thought about adding them. I'm on a planner low spend. You can look at my budget pages later. So I have money to spend, but I gave myself a very specific lump sum for the end of the year, and that has really made me resistant to buying things until I was really sure I want them. So I don't currently have dividers between the sections, and I could probably just make something myself, but I do have thumb tabs to take me to the specific page that I want. So after these front pages, I have some MakseLife stuff. They are available as printables, and I have scaled them down for Pocket Plus. It does make them pretty tiny, but that doesn't really bother me. So all of my MakseLife stuff is next, but I have a tab here to get to my annual goals. And then I have a tab. Yeah, I'm having some trouble with the page turning. I'm hoping that the hole punch I got will help. I have a tab to go to my monthly goals. I have a tab to go to my weekly goals and reflections. I use these weekly actions to help fill in this list, and then I don't actually usually reference it during the week. So we'll see if I keep that tab there. Then I have one for food. These are some that I designed myself. These are for meal planning and grocery list making. I think they work really well, but I'm not sure they work really well for me. So I'm still playing with it, but here's like a full sheet that has like the stuff in the fridge that I'm like trying to not forget about. You know, like, oh, I have extra feta cheese and I want to make sure I pick a meal that uses feta cheese. Same thing in the freezer. This isn't really populated yet. And then I didn't print these correctly, so they're kind of up and down, unfortunately. But on this left side I have lists based on where in the grocery store I need to go, and on the right side I have meals. And the idea is that after I meant to print them so that once I finish this meal plan, then for next week I'd flip it over and it would have list here and it would look like this again, and I could take this half sheet out. It would have the meals from the week before that I don't need anymore, and it would have this week's list on it for when I walk around the grocery store. It's worth mentioning that I'm only cooking for a household of 2, so my list is pretty short. This isn't a populated list yet, but Pocket might not be the right thing for a family. A pocket half sheet might not be the right thing for a family who eats more food than we do. But I like the design of this. I'm quite proud of it. But I haven't actually used it the way I designed it much. But I'm hoping to more in the future. We've been kind of out of sorts since the holidays. Even though it's been 3 weeks, our food is still changing. Then I have a tab for media. These are for different streaming services that I want to watch things on. I have a tab, and then I have a tab for my budget. Here I have a wish list for things I wanted to buy and didn't buy. Here I have my like running budget list. Here's a fountain pen wish list. That's different than my, I just write things down as I feel like. Here I had to do a little brain dump about what I wanted in a everyday carry pen and a work pen, just to like get it out of my brain. Here's a list of what we subscribe to every month, and then I have a bunch of just quick jot notes, and I try to keep the very back page available. So disregard all the messy things. It's an experiment. But I try to keep this open for the quick notes. This is for like a thing just popped into my mind and I need to jot it down not in a specific place, but just, you know, somewhere. And this last page is convenient for that, because if my planner is open to here, then I can just open it like quickly. If it's closed, it's still not, I mean, it's not super fast, but it's easier to access than somewhere else. So, and then I try and I have a goal of trying to move this stuff somewhere more organized afterwards, although I haven't done that yet, so we'll see. But this is for just quick notes. I made just some really quick ring protectors here, experiment, and then I have a pocket in the back, and the only thing I have in here are the MakseLife, the dot markers I've assigned to the MakseLife Colors of Life. I don't know if I will need that long term, but it's fine in there for now. I keep blotting paper and page flags here in the front, and I think that's everything. Let's talk a little bit about holes. So I have just a regular hole punch that I have set up for a 5. I'm sorry, not for A5, for pocket. Well, I have it set up for A5, and then I figured out where to make them for. This is pocket page. Originally I was doing pocket. I've since moved to pocket plus, which is just a little bit bigger in each direction. And this works, but the holes are really big, and that's part of why everything looks a little slippy and slidey here at the bottom and not neat, is there's a lot of room for the pages to move in these big holes. And it just looks unorganized in a way I don't love, and I think it's part of what's adding to some difficulty getting the pages to go nicely as I move across. The other thing is that with rings this small, the standard hole punch, and I'm not talking like a standard planner hole punch, I'm talking a standard hole punch for like doing, you know, your 3-ring binders or whatever. I've just hacked one of those. They do the rings, the holes too far inside the page, and so I have to then trim a little here so that they turn nicely on these tiny rings. And that's fine, but it does mean that things are a little less neat and a little less whatever. So I bought one of these. This is a 4mm one. I'll put a link. It's got denotations for a bunch of different sizes here, including pocket and A7. I've only had this a few days, and I haven't fully investigated this yet, but it does make much smaller holes. So here you can see these are the holes that my hole punch made. Here's this one, and they are much closer to the edge. This side has been trimmed, so that works well. And the pocket size works well for these pocket inserts. The problem is that there's not one for Pocket Plus, which is fine, and I have not yet quite figured out where I need to line things up in order for Pocket Plus to happen. But my hope is that as I use up pages in this ring notebook, that I will take those pages out and swap them in with things that have been punched like this, and then I can just redo like my annual goal pages, copy those over, and then have everything in the smaller holes. But they do fit when you get them. Yeah, here's one. They do move nicely on the page. I gotta figure out how to get the holes in the right place. They're the right spacing, I just need to get them in the right place. So I'm pleased with that, and there's a lot less play on them, so I think it will make my pages line up less haphazardly. This always happens, and I'm constantly like slightly messing with them so that my tabs are where I want them to be. So I'll put a link to this. I haven't tested it for a long time or anything, but if you have a plotter or something, you might like that as well, because I have seen people talk about having to trim their pages. I think that's everything I'm currently looking to say. The rings actually aren't in here permanently, and I don't have the rings on the spine, and I've been really pleased with how I did that. They're pretty solidly in there. This is how it looks. I actually put it in the wrong place the first time. As I said, this is a prototype. But this has been working great for me, and I have no intentions to do anything other than the slight modifications. I will be sewing a leather one very soon, I think. So this has been working great. It's super functional for me. It is very compact for how much it holds. I don't know, the whole thing is maybe 1 3/8 inches wide. Sorry to my metric people, I don't have a metric ruler around. And I could easily bulk, I think, up more of the rings if I wanted to, although I'm trying to keep that on the sleek side. So I find it a very portable packet just to carry around with me all day, and with my things, I have everything I need, and I just can carry it from room to room, surface to surface with me. And whenever something crosses my mind, or I have a thing to check off in my habit tracker, everything is really accessible. So what motivated this switch to Passport from B6 is that now that when I joined the planner community, I was mostly working from home, and now I am mostly working away from home, and I needed something that, I could have had a work one, and like a home one and an on-the-go one, but I don't have the patience to really be dealing with two books that hold the same information. And so when I realized I needed something that was with me, I wanted my whole system to be with me. I still have my B6 planner. I love it, but it is a journal and a memory keeper now. All of my planning happens here and on Google Calendar. And so the Common Planner Passport, I love it. It's wonderful, but it just doesn't quite have the capacity to be 100% of what I need. It's like 85% of what I need, or something. But the addition of these rings really means that I don't have to conserve pages. So, I can do my dailies in here, but like just my random thoughts, I can do on this. I can have the goal setting stuff. I can take notes. There's somewhere where I have notes from the MakseLife videos. I should move these somewhere. I don't need them with me all of the time. But the last 15% that I didn't feel like it could happen in my Passport is here in this rings. And honestly, mathematically, this doesn't make sense, but the rings take this from 85% to like 120% of what I need, and it's just incredibly satisfying and something I'm really thrilled with. Now, one can wonder, what's the deal with talking to you about something you can't get? And I'm sorry about that. I expect that there are some custom leather makers who'd be willing to make something like this for you. I'm toying with the idea of making some of them. I just really want to live in it, want to work on it. Siobhan of Just Scribble has ordered. There is something kind of like this maybe being offered by a shop that I don't remember the name of, and I'll put here. She's going to test that out and see, and we can compare if the Passport planner will fit in that or not. So that could be a good option. My intention is not to wave it in front of your face. It's just to talk about planner fun and to see what it's like to live in my brain, and to spark some ideas and inspiration around in the community. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you have any questions, leave them below, and we can talk again soon. Bye, friends.